Morning, everyone. Glad you're here. Excited for the conversation today. I'm just greeting all the note takers that's popping up saying, "Do you mind if I record?" So, saying yes to those, and they're in. So I'm excited and excited for today's conversation. It kind of dovetails really nicely off of last week's conversation around some of the challenges with um, moving to social media and away from job boards. But I think this is another really key aspect, talking about the conflictive goals of a hiring employer and a job board. And Alex is absolutely the right person to come in and kind of partner and drive this discussion with us because of his background. So, but I'm going to let him talk a little bit more about that himself. So I'm going to wait one more minute for folks to join in. Um, Bob, every time you turn your camera on, I want to yell double freaking rainbow. What does it mean? But I love that guy's video. It cracks me up every time.
That was meaningful for me. That was last year in the big storms in California, and just so happened that was the same day that the tree out front of my house fell down and my fence fell.
Oh,
So that was my reward later in the afternoon. So there you go.
It's
yeah,
the week of the rainbow since it's St. Patrick's Day week, right?
Yep.
So, hopefully underneath that tree or that fence, you found a pot of gold.
yeah.
Well, I found a big bill for the tree removal, but it is what it is.
Yeah, it was a
They
pot of
took the
gold
pot
for
of gold.
someone.
Yeah, exactly. There you go.
Awesome. All right, guys. Well, it is 3 past, so I want to get things rolling and glad everyone is here. For anyone who's new, my name is Bill Fanning. I'm part of the team here at Talk and really excited for you to join us. Um, for optimized time, I'm not going to take a look at the Talk platform, but if you're new or you're coming from LinkedIn, I highly encourage you to join. It's free, and we do great conversations like this on a weekly basis and try and share content and provide a safe space to talk about talent acquisition challenges and processes and how we all do better. So please go join, take a look at it, join in the forums. We're going to be doing a big tech upgrade in the next month, so it's going to become even more fun to interact with. And so I'm really excited that Alex is here from JobSync, and we're talking a little bit about a real interesting conflictive goals of recruiting tools versus hiring employers. And I think it's really, really interesting. It's been a conversation I've been part of a number of times, and I find it fascinating each time. So we'll definitely, I think, get some great discussions going. Um, I just wanted to mention if you're interested in a new tech platform next week, Tuesday, 11 o'clock, we're going to walk through it for the last time. I'll answer any questions. The goal is to have it go live through the month of April. And so it's coming soon, but I'd love to share it with you if you're interested. And for those of you who would like to join us in June, we're having a great experience in Scottsdale. They promise cool weather, no heat, no sun. I'm kidding. It's gonna be a little warm, but it's gonna be a great discussion. And we'll bring lots of sunscreen. So I hope you can join us because it's a great and alternative conference model than what we do today for some of the conferences that Alex and I just red-eyed in from um, in Las Vegas called Transform. Great event, but we're putting together more of a talent acquisition retreat. Um, and so Alex is here. I'm going to let him introduce himself in a moment. But what I wanted to do was just talk a little bit about, for a second, to set the stage and get some people's feedback around who's experienced this issue. Um, when we think about a job board, right? And in these circles, I've put kind of their goals, right? Their goal is a job board, and I've worked for one. I used to run sales for the ladders a while ago, when the ladders was a thing. But the goal was to maximize listing and traffic, right? Increase application volume, optimize for engagement, make it super easy to apply, generate ad revenue. And the goal, and I think you'll notice this both on LinkedIn and on Indeed, is to keep users on the platform, right? Apply for more jobs, all this great stuff. On the other side of the fence, we have an employer that wants to find a quality applicant and reduce the time and cost to fill that job, improve candidate quality, and decrease irrelevant traffic, right? So stark differences right there. And so one basically says, hey, I need to generate revenue. I'm a for-profit business. I generate revenue by people applying for jobs. The other one says, I need to hire quality people for my organization. I don't need to put a job up and 48 hours later have 800 to 1,000 people applying because I'll never get through all of that. And so what that creates is the area of conflict. And this is what Alex and I are going to talk about with all of you. But I'm curious, and jump in and share. I'm sure some of you have experienced this, but candidate quantity versus quality, right? Job boards want to give you quantity. We want quality. I'd rather have 10 high qualified people than 100 or 500 just random names coming across my desk. Broad versus targeted visibility, right? Some of these job boards put you who's received jobs from LinkedIn that are from other industries or other job boards and just completely irrelevant. Like, being told that I'd be a great doctor or something like that, which I've actually got recently. Platform retention versus direct hiring, revenue generation versus cost control. There's a stark difference here. So I'm really curious. Maybe this is a great place to start, and then I'll turn it over to Alex. Anyone want to share some of their experiences or who's had this conflict? Because I definitely know as a hiring manager and as a recruiter, I've suffered from this. Renuka, thanks for sharing. I'm sure you did, and probably will continue. So I appreciate it. Can you share a little bit about it?
So, so this was, I was looking for a niche skill. I believe that was for someone who had experience with big data and sales. So basically, sales manager in big data. And I tried one of these job boards. I was talking to them, ZipRecruiter, and they let me use it for free to just see what kind of profiles we get. And then when I posted my job, I got like around 300 applicants. And that's when I remember telling them, hey, I'm looking for a needle in a haystack. And you just dumped the whole haystack on me. So that was a difficult one. So yeah, I did face it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, you definitely, in some of those situations, don't need to go with the magnet to find the needle. You need to go with the pitchfork to move the haystack. So I can completely appreciate that analogy. So thanks for sharing that. So that kind of sets the stage. They're both feeding into this challenge. And with that, I'm going to shut my screen share off. And Alex, I'd love for you to take a moment, introduce yourself, and we can delve into this topic.
Thank you, Bill. And I really like that analogy. My analogy is when it's too much snow. I'm a skier, and I always find it funny when like a ski resort has so much snow that they can't operate. Too much of a good thing. I guess in the case that you had experienced, Renuka, that the bale of hay that they gave you, probably, I don't know, did you end up having the needle in there? Did you find the person you were looking for, or was it 300 people completely off target?
300 people are completely off target because either they were big data analysts or they were salespeople, but I did not find a good combination of both. Nope, it did not turn out to be successful.
That's a pretty big bummer. Sorry to hear that. I just want to make sure that the screen that I think that I'm sharing is being shared. Does it say JobSync and conflict of interest?
Yes, sir.
Great. All right. So we're going to talk a little bit. I'm going to talk a little bit about me and our company, but I'm going to start with I guess eating the dog food and talk a little bit first about some disclosures and statements, right? So kind of just the making sure I get everything clear and transparent up front. These are my opinions. There's things in here that might sound like really important advice. It's not legal advice. There are a lot of forward-looking statements about what we do. They may not be available. You should obviously consult your legal team. So just in the context of talking here, we are a sponsor of Talk. So we are a supporter, an underwriter, if you will, of continuing this forum to engage. I'm going to talk a lot about some research that was done with Career Crossroads, where we are also a sponsor. We specifically underwrote research on conflicts of interest. It was a panel of about 18 people, did research with over 1,000 different survey participants in that TA community. And just with clarity, we sell software, and so a lot of times we come up and we want to talk about the software that we are selling. So I'm going to go through some background about me and about JobSync and how we got started, because I think that it's going to have a lot of relevance specifically for what Bill was talking about this candidate quantity versus quality. This has been a long conversation. Kind of fun fact story. I worked at a job board and partnered with ZipRecruiter when they began as an organization. Spent an awful lot of time talking with Ian, who's one of the co-founders and CEO, about this exact topic, quantity versus quality. We're going to talk about conflicts of interest. You can't necessarily avoid all conflicts of interest. Like what Bill was describing, I think is a perfect example of this conflict that exists, this tension that exists between job boards and employers. The key is that it should be brought out into the light. Probably most important is that there isn't a misunderstanding around those conflicts. Go through some specific examples, not just in the job board space, but in other areas, and then what to advocate to do. So a little bit about me. I'm located right outside of Washington, D.C. I've got 3 kids and I've been married for almost 25 years. I have type 1 diabetes. A lot of what you're going to hear today is heavily rooted in data. I like to say that I live every day through understanding data. My daughter and I both have type 1 diabetes, and we have monitors on our bodies, and we have devices that deliver insulin, and it's like we are living cyborgs, and really run our entire life by data. I mentioned skiing is the thing that I do and I'm passionate about kind of almost all year. From a professional setting perspective, I've been a part of a couple of different job boards, done consulting with a number. Bill, I love the fact that you brought up the ladders. They just reactivated, or somebody reactivated, the email list recently, and like a whole ton of people got ladders job alerts. So those emails finally got out the door recently. Kind of funny throwback from a little bit ago. I'm a bit of a serial entrepreneur. When I left my last job board gig, which was with Beyond.com, which is now Next, I started 5 companies in 3 years, all centered around trying to kind of figure out what would be a really great thing to go do in order to deliver value to customers. And I'm going to talk about that value in just a second. Back in 24 years ago, I was a co-founder at Job.com. So again, a lot of job board experience, as well as user growth. So at Beyond, I helped grow the base of the business to over 60 million people in 6 years. JobSync is a where we do a number of different things kind of centered around recruitment marketing, optimization, and hiring operations, really top of funnel type of stuff. Interact between companies' applicant tracking systems and the media that they buy. So, Bill being very gracious and saying I'm a good person to be involved in this conversation to talk about conflict. It does center around the fact that we work on behalf of employers to help them optimize what they're getting out of the job boards and various media sources that they're using. And it's all built on kind of 4 core pillars. We are trying to right size applicant volume. So 300 is too many to deal with. 3 is not enough. But more importantly, it's about getting the right set of applicants that you can actually make a proper decision on. We like to think about starting with earned and organic traffic first. So a lot of what you'll hear is about leveraging brand and your place in the market first, then go and expand to do promotion to create more reach, and then go out and spend money. And we're going to specifically talk about some of the elements around how we approach business models in that regard. And then ultimately, we want to try to remove manual work. Just real quick on our solutions, we do a lot with respect to job ad management, candidate engagement, all sitting on top of a platform that is focused on high scale, high deliverability. We've got customers that hire 1,000 people a day and deal with hundreds of thousands of job postings, kind of all roots in at making this really great candidate experience around the application. And we've started to bring in different AI solutions to kind of act as agents in and amongst the service. So as relevant, we'll talk a little bit about it. All right, so let's talk about the conflict. So this gentleman here, his name's Clay Christensen. He passed away a few years ago. He was a professor at Harvard for a number of years. And he had a bunch of different specific theories. You may have heard about like Innovator's Dilemma. He's the author of that book. But he had a core set of research around this concept called the job to be done. And what we had as an insight in starting this business, and really the roots of this business go back, JobSync, probably about 11 years ago. A really good example is this conversation that we had that was driven by the need to deliver applicants. This is sitting in a room at Beyond, and we're talking about, all right, we need to deliver applicants. So thinking about job to be done, like our job as a job board, I think Bill said, as a job board operator, we want to make revenue, right? But like, we want to generate as many applicants as we can. But really the flip side, the buyer, they're not just thinking about applicants, right? They're thinking about qualified applicants, right? They're thinking about how those qualified applicants, you're thinking about how do qualified applicants turn into quality hires? Well, to be a quality hire, it means that they have to stay, right? It doesn't do any good to hire somebody if they leave in 3 weeks or 3 months. You really want somebody to stay, and not just stay and occupy a seat and like the way Gallup talks about the disengaged worker, but you really need people that perform, right? And this guy on the bottom, Vic from Scripps Healthcare, he had his talk that my co-founder and I sat in on in 2014 when he was running. He was a CHRO at Scripps Health in San Diego. And he talked about how he evaluated job boards. This is to a group of job board operators, probably about 150 of us. And he said, he put this gigantic set of data on the screen. I wish I had a screenshot of that from 11 years ago. But it had all of the job boards on one column and then a whole bunch of data. And then on the right-hand side, it had the index of top 20% performers at Scripps indexed to the job boards. So this is how we evaluate whether or not to buy from you. So that was profound. And like the thing about Vic is that he literally wrote a book called Measuring ROI in Healthcare. And it really all rooted into the healthcare organization is a function of who you hire. And so it's all about finding the top performers to come in and do the work that you need to be done. This blew my mind, right? Like I'm selling clicks and job ads. And here's a guy telling me, the job to be done is I want top 20% performers. And the thing that sent me out the door at that job was I brought that back to the boardroom. We had discussions and nobody else agreed. So I said, well, I'm going to go out and do something else and figure out how to address this job to be done. So top 20% performers, Vic Buzacaro. So fast forward to a little bit more about JobSync and what we think about the job to be done. So Allied Universal is one of our customers, an enormous hiring organization. They, like I said, hire about 1,000 people a day. We help them save over $5 million a year in overtime not paid because they hit their hiring plan, because they generate enough applicants, starting with organic first, then also save money from advertising, right? And so we think about that conflict of interest in the job board recruitment marketing space. If my objective is to get you to spend more money, then it can't really be all about optimization as well, because if I optimize, then you might save money. And so that's the tension that exists, right? So this is one of my favorite quotes in this arena around conflicts of interest. This is Charlie Munger, late Charlie Munger. He died recently at 99 years young, lived an amazing life. 2016, 2017, he had this quote about, show me the incentive and I'll show you the outcome. So I think Bill shared recent conversations in this forum about different types of advertising that you might get recommendations to move money from job board A to job board B. Why are you getting that recommendation? And this is where we can become kind of interactive. If you have questions, please chime in. But I can tell you one of the reasons that you might get that recommendation is that maybe you're going to get better performing applicants out of job board B. Or maybe the person making the recommendation is going to make more money by recommending job board B. There's like different solution providers in the space, be it programmatic tools or agencies and different things. They might make different amounts of money if they sell advertising for job board A than they do for job board B. And so we talk about and think about incentives. People may have heard of this book. Anybody know what this book is related to? This is a book that just was recently released within the last couple weeks. I'll go ahead and go just to for the sake of time, but this is about Facebook and the mindset around move fast and break things, and that the leadership and that organization was focused on one particular thing, which was ad revenue, which is to get people to click more, which is to get people to engage more. And like the net effect, the second order and third order effects of these careless people is that suicide rates go up, self-harm goes up, and lots of other damage. It's like, what are you doing? What are you focused on? What is your incentive structure? What guardrails do you put around? And when we started our company, just as an example, we said, look, we're not going to take any commissions. We're going to help you spend your money by charging one flat rate software fee for the year based upon hiring volume. But we're not going to make more money because you spend more money, or make less money because you spend less money. Our goal is to help you spend the optimal amount of money. And so when we start thinking about like how that relates to conflicts of interest, right? This, like, let's talk about what is a conflict of interest, right? So it's a situation or an event or moment when decisions are made because of personal gain for either yourself or your business over or in place of the duties to another. So for example, if my job to be done as a service provider is to help you spend your money most effectively, but my incentive structure is one where I'm going to make more money by getting you to spend more money, we have a conflict. That doesn't mean it's bad, because maybe a flat rate commission is actually fine because it does represent a variable, but like it needs to be clear. You want to avoid is that hidden conflict where somebody is making out over top of the other. Trying to get this to advance here. So what does it do to your organization? So it erodes trust, it creates confusion. To get back to that example of job board A versus job board B, right? If B is recommended over A, it's like, why is that being recommended? And if it's not transparent, like, hey, I make 30% or 60% of the revenue that's generated in this category versus 15% over here. And like, if you as the buyer don't know that, then you just think that the recommendation is being made for positive purposes, but it's really because maybe it just adds more money, results in bad advice, thus bad decisions, missed plans. You think about if you get bad advice, you end up getting 300 applicants, you waste all that time. That was time and attention and money not spent on some other activity that would have resulted in making the hire. To get this salesperson that's going to do data sales, I'm imagining that there's probably a revenue target that's tied to that hire. Well, if you don't make that hire for a month, you're going to miss that revenue target, right? That then could result in people getting laid off. Like this is what drives economic cycles up and down when you apply that to a macro sense. Obviously underachievement and ultimately even potentially legal jeopardy. I'll give you an example of that in a second. So is this important? How important is it? This is a survey of about 1,200 or so members of CXR, overwhelmingly trying to understand what's going on in the world of conflict of interest. I'm going to give a couple of specific examples in just one second. So what do you get out of it when it all comes together? The integrity, transparency, and fairness drives ethical decision-making, drives confidence and trust amongst all of the stakeholders. So across your organization, if there's clarity around when there are conflicts of interest, that if they're exposed and it's transparent, it's addressed and managed, that's when you build confidence. And ultimately that reduces risk for the organization as a whole. So let's talk about a few examples. So these I'm going to walk through one by one, some personal advancement, ad buying, pay to play, and some conference talks and a research paper example. So I reached out to a person on LinkedIn, and I reached out to this person. He was the VP of talent acquisition. And I said, hey, this is what my company does. Would you be willing to take 15 minutes to talk to us about what we do? I don't need to ask for a show of hands, but like, can you rhetorically imagine that you've gotten a sales pitch on LinkedIn from somebody? I think everybody does, probably have since this call started, right? This is what I got as a response. This gentleman who works for a fairly large healthcare organization wanted me to pay him $500 an hour to pitch our product. Now, that's ingenious as an organization. The organization doesn't support this particular activity, I will say, but like that's a personal gain at the expense of his organization. Maybe we're not a good fit for his organization, or maybe we are, but if he's taking money off on the side for the purpose of getting ahead personally at the expense of his organization, that's a big conflict of interest, right? Especially if your job includes evaluating the technologies and the noise in the market and all the things. I'm sure he's overwhelmed, but this is a really good example of personal interest getting in the way of the organization that he is supporting. Again, another rhetorical question. I'm sure you've heard it 1,000 times, but like consumer ad tech and recruitment ad tech, they're just a lot alike. Maybe recruitment ad tech's a little bit behind. That's kind of the general mythology. Here's an example of where I think that there are some parallels. Let me start with why I think that they're not the same. So I spent a few years running an e-commerce group, and when we found a type of marketing that was effective at getting customers, and it became predictable, such that we could spend, let's say, $1,000 and make $3,000 in revenue from spending that $1,000, we would spend every dollar that we could on that marketing activity, because to us, getting more and more customers was clearly better. In recruitment advertising, I think Renuka would agree that getting another 300 applicants on top of the first 300, probably not better. So just getting more applicants doesn't solve a problem. And in fact, this is a very material difference between consumer ad tech and recruitment ad tech. The chart that you see here, so the Guardian, starting in about 2015, started to do a lot of studying of the advertising revenue that they were generating. So about 12 to 14 years ago, there was a very heavy proliferation of advertising technologies that used real-time connections and real-time access to data to determine what ad to show to which user on your website on that page for that piece of content. Collectively, you could call it programmatic advertising. We have a form of programmatic advertising in recruitment advertising. In this case, real-time data, lots and lots of different pieces of the technology stack. And what they found was in this kind of outline was that half of the money that was being spent by the advertiser went to the AdTech system providers, and the other half went to the publishers with a fairly hefty spread. It actually went from 49% all the way to the mid 80s in terms of the amount of money that went to the tech rather than the publisher. Again, this is the Guardian going, why aren't we making more money? And they weren't making more money because it was going to the ad tech providers. This has a lot of parallel to our industry today, where intermediaries, if you go back in time to like pre-internet, ad agencies made 15%. It was standard. The newspaper gave the ad agency a discount. You bill your client $10,000. You'd pay the newspaper $8,500. You kept $1,500. Very standard across the ecosystem. Today, it's kind of all over the map, where you've got some job boards pay 15%, and in some cases, ad spend less than half of the money spent on advertising actually makes it to the publisher. So in that regard, it's actually quite similar. Not related to job boards. This is a presentation. I'm going to do my best in all of this to not call out any individual specific person, group, or company and so forth. So this is a presentation talking about enterprise talent intelligence on this particular page, 39 or so of this presentation. The person on stage highlights some companies that are doing really well in this category, but he doesn't tell you which of them are his clients. So out of 1,000 vendors in the space, and you get about a dozen on the screen, and 10 of the 12 are clients, the folks in the audience think, hey, this is a thought leader speaking from stage. Those must be customers. Those must be vendors I should go look at. And it's not that it's a problem for the person to talk about their company. I'm happy to talk about JobSync. But not disclosing it is a problem, right? It's the lack of transparency that then creates a pay-to-play. If you have to create a pay-to-play, XYZ company on here paying that particular thought leader an extra $100,000 and doing that over and over and over again, that cost flows through to you as the client. Same thing in a white paper. And you call this group of companies out of 1,000 different vendors and you narrow down, you say, these are the trailblazers, and 95% of the listed companies are clients. It's not actually editorial, that's an infomercial. It's like the difference between watching CNBC at 9 o'clock in the morning on Friday and 9 o'clock in the morning on Saturday. Is at 9 o'clock in the morning on Friday, you're getting some insights and thought leadership. At 9 o'clock in the morning on Saturday, you're getting commercial for a vacuum cleaner. So I talked a little bit about AdTech versus recruitment tech. So other things are like, this technology will change everything. Anybody heard that about AI? I think the great irony of the day is the AI being applied to HR agents, right? Human resource agents, but Anthropic and OpenAI and the other AI labs, you know what they don't use in their HR systems? They don't use their agents. So if the labs companies aren't using the agents, maybe it's not ready for prime time. So why are people doing it? Is it because they're trying to get your data to train their data? Yes. Are they doing it for other reasons, like testing and you are their test product? Yes. Are they willing to test on themselves? No. That's a problem, right? That's a conflict of interest. This integration that might be just paper thin. When you think about like putting your job posting up, that candidate comes in, registers, they apply to your job. The next job recommended to that candidate is a job that's very similar to the job that they just applied to with you. Right? Is that a problem? It's not a problem if it's disclosed and it's clear. It is a problem if they are using it and you are unaware. How do they use your organic jobs? Are they using it for distribution and user acquisition? I certainly did. How did I get beyond from 0 to 60 million users? Because I bought advertising using job postings on our website to get people to come. That is how it works. It's about being transparent and clear. Same thing with brand use. So if you look up your brand on Google, who's advertising on your brand to go get them? So what should you do? Start with training for yourself and internal team. Force or ask those companies that are producing content to disclose the relationships that they have. Set the bar high, set your expectations high, and be demanding. So when you download a white paper from whomever, from Talk, who are the underwriters for this content? Right? What are their motivations? What were their incentives to do it? Are they selling software? Are they making something on the back end? Internally, for that first example, where you want to have like a whistleblower, enable a confidential reporting channel. I had to make a decision. Am I going to report this guy? I chose not to. We talked about it internally. He said, that guy's probably leaving. He's going to go start a consulting company. And he did. It's kind of funny. Karma is a thing, I guess. Drive transparency at events, right? Ask for it, demand it of the conference organizers. Don't go and participate at conferences where it's all vendors that, or it's all thought leaders that are pimping the products of their customers and they're not willing to disclose it. Drive it with policies. So one of the recommendations that came out of that CXR research project was putting together a rider in your agreements and demand in the contract disclosure statements around commissions and other payments that are made so that it's in writing, so that you actually have teeth behind the requirements. And do the same thing with the presentations that are made and shared with your internal teams. So just a couple resources, and we'll share the deck along the way. That research report, it's about 30 pages. We spent a month putting it together across 18 people. So it's pretty in-depth. Highly recommend downloading it. It's a free resource for anybody to use. So, Bill, how would you like to take it from here?
Well, I think it's really interesting that I think you provided a lot of great data for us. I'm curious from, for me, definitely a couple things that rang out. One was some of the LinkedIn challenges. And I know Christy, I think it was Christy that mentioned that, that she had experienced similar things. Um, I'm curious from being hiring folks and sitting in the kind of the crosshairs of this chasm between performance-driven job boards or recruiting platforms and hiring employers. Um, I'm curious how some of these, Renuka shared, but I'd love to see if there are other people who could share. What are some of the ways you've felt this in your day-to-day activities? We don't have to call out job boards like Indeed or LinkedIn, but I'm curious where we're feeling or seeing this and how it's impacting us, or if somebody here has found a way to find that balance. I mean, it's a very valid and real thing. I don't think it's going to go away. It might even intensify a little bit with AI. So I'm wondering how we're approaching this from the people who are on the call. One of the ways that I experience it today is, and it's not necessarily, well, it is job related. Because I sit in a staffing and recruiting industry, I receive a lot of traffic and a lot of activity that I think is driven or revenue driven for clicks that doesn't really relate to me. So it's kind of driving that job search capability on one side, where on the other side, it's not helping the employer that those jobs are coming to me from. They're not well aligned. A lot of times they're not relevant, but they're being sent to me because of where I sit. And I'm wondering if I'm sure we all experience a little bit of that, but it's definitely a challenge in terms of wondering if anyone's getting value. When I get them, the first thing that goes through my mind is anyone getting value from this? Because I'm not. So that'd be an interesting point to talk a little bit about.
One thing just to build on that, we had a conversation internally, and Leah called out the point that job boards make a tremendous amount of revenue from the inefficiencies of the recruitment advertising. Almost to the point where it's like, if it was really super efficient, how do they model it? And that you can see a lot of that in Indeed's shift in their strategy to go more towards a staffing like strategy, to go more towards a marketplace concept. And so that part's super interesting to just kind of watch. But it is interesting to observe, like, where folks make more money from inefficiency. So, the example earlier about putting a posting up on a job board and you get hundreds of applicants, but not enough. And then what do? You go post another job on another job board, which then just generates more recruitment ad revenue.
Sorry about that. I was saying 100%, definitely experience some of that. And while it's definitely challenging, it's understandable because of the mechanisms that the recruitment advertising providers employ with their sales and messaging. Hey, we need to do, like, here's my experience. I put a job on Indeed. I don't get what I need. Well, that rhymes. I didn't even mean to do that. And then what happens is I'm being asked to spend more money, and the relevant data that they're using to get me to spend more makes sense at the point in time, because it's around traffic and the number of competitive jobs that are out there and the price per click. But at the end of the day, I spend that money and I still don't get what I'm hoping for, other than, I increase the cost per fill of that job. And guys, I'm gonna just so today is my birthday. And the only reason I'm saying that is because somebody is at my door trying to deliver something. I'm blaming my mother. So I'm just gonna run really quickly and stop that, because you can't hear it because I keep putting myself on mute, but my dogs are in the other room about ready to go through the door. So I apologize. I'll be right back. Norm, if you could help out for a sec, I'd appreciate it.
Justin's got his hand up.
Justin's got it. Justin, you guys can just for 2 seconds, and I sincerely apologize. It's always at the most inopportune moment.
I hope it's a good 3 dozen flowers for you, and happy birthday.
I think it's crumble cookies. I can already see the box. So I'll be right back.
I was just going to mention something related to the point Alex was making that I think is salient. So in a past life, I was in charge of buying and selling traffic to content sort of based media brands, right? And what's really interesting in the sort of traditional advertising world, there's a lot of mechanisms that the ad providers, so Google and really it's Google, Facebook at this point, where they judge the quality of traffic that their partners are driving, and it creates this really interesting set of incentives where the publishers are, ensuring that ads are remain visible, aren't accidentally clicked, all these kinds of things. And when you extrapolate that out into any sort of marketplace where one side is basically trying to buy results from the audience built and maintained by the other side of a transaction, you have just a very interesting dynamic that you have to account for. Which is why in talent, it's so important to look at your source data on not just cost per hire or cost per application or time to fill or anything like that, but also like try to look more longitudinally and say, 12 months after hire, the folks that are still here and are part of that top 20% that Alex mentioned earlier, where did they come from? What was the nature of the relationship for the source that we got them from? What's the current nature of the relationship from that source? How can we look to build more of that in the ecosystem that we operate in, and less of the sort of much shorter time horizon incentives of, again, going back to clicks and raw applicants versus quality applicants. I just want to point it out that there is absolutely some data that ATS's JobSync can provide to get a better sense of that versus just the upfront stuff.
Yeah, I think just to take that and go 2 steps further, right? It's or to summarize, it really is, you've got an input output decision making that needs to be part of this, right? And so then how do you make sure that your data is really clean? I think there are 2 big problems that have existed that have perpetuated this issue for forever is, can you get accurate source information all the way into the ATS and then all the way through to hire and then all the way through to the performers, right? So like what Vic was outlining 11 years ago was kind of revolutionary, to be able to pull through the source of applicant all the way through to how do they perform after their first year at Scripps was, a massive data journey. And that's where it all begins. I think it's important to look at and say, okay, who's going to help me make this data more clear? And then are the actors involved, are they incentivized to help you make it more clear? Or are they going to help maintain murkiness in the data? And that's where what you're describing about Google and their purpose or their focus on traffic quality comes from. They want to perpetuate their monopoly. That's their incentive. And their incentive, it drives the decisions around making data more clear, which then forces everybody to continue to go to them because they become a clear signal of outcome data, which then just perpetuates their monopoly. What'd you get, Bill?
I have, it looks like 8 to a dozen really big cookies, but
Oh.
I know. So here's the thing. If I open the box, all damnation is going to break loose because I'm going to eat them all. So I just put it on the counter because I don't have, when it comes to cookies, I'm exceptionally weak. Yeah, I would just start damning. So I was like, nope, we'll just put the box down, and I'm going to run away because they look really good. So that was it. His cookies, and then she must have got a text message because the second I come back in here, my phone starts ringing. Did you get the cookies? I'm like, yeah, I did. So God bless moms. They, no matter what birthday you're having, they're on it.
It's your born day. It's her birthday. So there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, it's Chrissy had called out about the sarcasm. I only put the one message out of the 6. I'll say, Chrissy, it wasn't sarcasm because it started with something a little bit more benign, and it got to the offer, and then it got to the to some other pieces. And when he left and he started consulting after leaving the firm that he was with, he already had clients lined up, and that happened for a reason. So I wish it was. That would be the better reality.
It is an interesting, and again, I'm sure I will sound sarcastic, but I receive a lot of, and when I say a lot, I would say 3 to 5 per day outreaches on LinkedIn, InMail, or Messenger. And all of them start with, I'm not trying to sell you anything. And all end with, it costs X amount to do this. So it's to go back to being sarcastic, it sometimes develops because it's such a repeatable pattern that's happening. And it's one of the things that's really interesting about the value of some of the platforms we use and the enabling technologies that are being built to sit on top of them. They're not the job board provider, but they're a third party that's actually exacerbating the issue because they're causing more activity to happen. And I think some of that activity isn't always quality. And so that's, so.
Well, think about this in the context of the technologies of the day being AI and people that use ChatGPT to rewrite a resume, or they'll use Operator inside of OpenAI to go and auto apply, or they'll use AI apply, and there are a bunch of these different automation application tools that just start getting more and more applicants. And we see it in the recruiting side, but it's happening on the sales side. I got a phone call from an AI agent that sounded exactly like a person, and it was amazing. And the only reason I know it was an AI is because I kept coming back to, like, are you AI or a person? And her first response to that question was, I'm sorry, I sound a bit robotic sometimes. And then she went on to more pitch. And I go, wait a minute, you didn't answer my question. Are you an AI or are you a person? And she goes, I'm an AI agent. And I was like, wow, this is kind of blowing my mind. So that's only expanding the problem of the 3 to 5, which will turn into 15 to 20 in a minute.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's definitely an interesting challenge that's out there. And the other thing that's always been curious to me is we're talking generalizations. And I think that there are unique issues where board providers do deliver, depending on the role, the industry, the person you're trying to hire. So it's easy to talk about that conflict. And I'm kind of balancing the ship a little bit, maybe for the job board providers, but they do deliver a service, right? And no doubt they were designed for a way to help us take an opportunity and put it out to the masses. But some of the things we're talking about are disrupting that. One of the things that's exciting to me, and Alex and I, as we mentioned, we we both red-eyed in this morning from Transform in Las Vegas, but there are some really interesting enabling technologies coming out that can help kind of balance that. AI is definitely leading in that forefront to help us refocus on quality and alignment and the taxonomy of skill sets and all of these great things that can help take those 1,000 applies we get, and quickly and assistively, not selectively, assistive AI bring the best matches to the top based on the criteria you design. So there are ways that I think we're going to get through this. And I've been in so many conversations through the years where, hey, we're pay per click, we're pay per apply, we're pay per quality click, we're pay per quality. Like, well, how do you measure it? Like, it gets a little nuanced, and it's a continuing conversation because it's hard to figure out. No doubt.
Yeah.
So putting some of
I,
these
and
technologies on top, I think is a logical and effective use of that AI capability.
yeah, I think so. The big takeaway that I would hope that everybody takes from this conversation and just in general is dig in and ask, how do you know? What's your incentive? Why do you believe what you believe? Like, if you get at those things, then you can really start to understand, like, is there some type of hidden conflict that exists here
Yeah.
that needs to be addressed? Or is that conflict present? Like, the way you opened, I think, is perfect. Like, job boards exist as a centralized place for people to go look for jobs. I mean, Indeed took off and became the number one job board in the world because it provided a single source of job search activity for people worldwide. The revenue the revenue incentive never was unclear in that process. That's not a hidden conflict, right? Um, it's just a matter of being able to see it, and then also as a buyer really recognizing that the hidden conflicts will drive you to a place where you make unintended decisions that then have unintended consequences. And so ask the hard questions. Torrin Ellis, who was the MC at Transform this week, had a really good story that he was sharing about walking up and talking with a vendor, and he and his friend were asking questions. They were asking, like, what model do you use? What happens to the data? Where does the data go? How do you use the data? Like, be inquisitive, be curious, dig in. Don't just take it at the surface level. Don't take surface level answers to hard questions. That's the point of having this conversation, right? Is conflicts exist. Just let's put them out on the table so that we understand the motivations of why people say what they say. Because you're right, Bill, there's a tremendous number of technologies that are being invented today, right? You have access to AWS and these different language models that really do facilitate amazing, amazing things. But why do you believe what you believe, right? And are you saying something that you hope to be true or you know to be true?
Yeah, 100%. Well, guys, we're right at the hour. I appreciate everybody who's still here with us. And Courtney, I'm jealous because you look like you're definitely doing the best way for a webinar that I've seen outside with a beer. So I think that might be the new staple of how LinkedIn has to participate. Not LinkedIn, or how our members have to participate. That will be our new backdrop for I think it's awesome. But really, I'm really glad everyone's here. And Alex and uh, everyone else, thank you for your coming and sharing this knowledge. It was awesome. All of the stuff that was shared, I'm going to send out to everyone via email at the conclusion of this. Awesome time. We're at the hour. I always like to try and end on time. So Justin and Alex, thank you so much for bringing this and sharing it. It was super helpful. And for everyone from Talk who attended, thanks for your time. You're what makes this community powerful, and I really, really enjoyed this discussion. So with that, I'm going to shut it down, and thank you everyone once again for your time.